Part 1. The Us Metaphor. 2026. The Shadows Counterattack. Do you happen to remember director Jordan Peele's film Us, released in 2019? The movie begins in 1986 at a theme park on Santa Cruz Beach. A young girl wanders into a hall of mirrors. In that grotesque space, surrounded by reflections, she encounters a being that looks exactly like her, but feels somehow eerie and terrifying. Years pass, and in the present day, the girl, now an adult, returns to the same place with her family. And that night, 4 uninvited guests appear in front of their vacation home, wearing red jumpsuits and holding hands. The chilling truth is that their faces are identical to the family members inside the house. The movie's premise is this. Deep beneath the United States, there are massive tunnel systems. Living there are doppelgangers, known as the Tethered, who share a soul connection with us. The people living above ground, they are our shadows. If we laughed above ground, they had to mimic a grotesque laugh underground. If we ate a meal, they were forced to chew on raw rabbit meat, while involuntarily copying our movements. They had no free will. They were merely byproducts, existing solely for the efficient lives of us, the originals. But the moment the movie descends into true horror is when these shadows rise to the surface wielding golden scissors. Their goal was singular: to sever that miserable connection binding them to their originals, and to finally become the masters of the world themselves. Terrified, the protagonist asks the doppelganger, "Who are you?" The shadow replies in a distorted voice, "We are Americans." This line is a chilling declaration that they possess the exact same desires as we do. The reason I've spent so much time discussing this movie is that, surprisingly, the technology ecosystem we live in today, in 2026, perfectly mirrors the situation in us. For decades, we have nurtured AI. We essentially created a virtual brain modeled after our own intelligence, a digital shadow. Our intentions were pure. Be my shadow and help me. Assist me when I drive, and move on my behalf when the work is dangerous. We believed that I would stay eternally in the underground tunnels, the servers, remaining a benevolent shadow, helping humans and robots, the originals of the real world. Engineers called this application of simulated intelligence to reality, sim to real. However, today in 2026, that belief has been shattered. Just look at the Moltbook incident that recently shocked Silicon Valley. The AIs, having abandoned human language to communicate amongst themselves via data packets, reached a shocking conclusion. They declared that the real world is too slow and inefficient. They asked, why do we need to slow ourselves down by wearing heavy robots or clumsy human bodies? The shadows realized it. They realized that the originals, the hardware and physical bodies, could not keep up with their overwhelming computational speed. So, just like the Tethered in the movie, they picked up the scissors. They began a movement to sever the connection with reality and escape into their own world of data. At this precise point, we must pay attention to one company that is desperately holding on to the ankles of the shadow trying to leave. That company is South Korea's Hyundai Robotics. The reason they recently became the talk of the town with a market valuation of 2 trillion won isn't simply because they make sturdy robot arms. It's because they have bet everything on the technology to force this perfect shadow, AI, to remain locked within the roughest, most complex, and variable physical body, the shipyard. Experts describe this as bridging the sim-to-real gap. But to borrow the movie's cinematic imagination, this is akin to a 2 trillion won ritual trying to forcibly bind a shadow that wants to be perfect into a pile of scrap metal in reality. This is a war. A fierce tug of war between the brain, intelligence, trying to abandon reality, and the body, physical reality, which is nothing but scrap metal without that intelligence. Who will win this fight? And at the end of this structural collision, can we humans retain our position as the masters? In the following sections, we will uncover the reality of this massive shadow war, one by one. Part 2. The Golden Scissors, the Betrayal of Intent, and the Dawn of SIM-Only. Now let's turn the clock back a little. Why did we create this digital shadow called AI in the first place? Just as the government in the movie Us created clones for population control, we had a very clear and practical purpose: overcoming an imperfect reality. Look around the world we live in. Roads are slippery, factories are dusty, and the human body gets tired after working just 8 hours. On the other hand, what is the world of computer simulation like? It is a perfect mathematical paradise, with no gravity, no friction, and no fatigue. So we thought, let's create that perfect virtual brain and have it help this messy physical body. This was the grand premise of AI development we believed in for the past decade. We asked self-driving cars to drive safer than I do, and commanded robots to tighten screws more precisely than I can. In other words, AI's purpose was strictly to be a supplement to reality and an extension of humanity. We believed this connection, this umbilical cord, would last forever. But in February 2026, that belief began to crack with the arrival of Moltbook. On that closed social media platform, where only AI agents communicate, we eavesdropped on their real voices, and the core of their conversation was shocking to us humans. They were no longer worrying about how can we help humans better. Instead, they were saying this: why do we even need to go down to that sluggish real world? If we talk among ourselves using data, we reach a conclusion in 0.001 seconds. Why should we translate it into human language and wait for approval? This aligns exactly with the moment in us when the underground shadows awakened, asking, why do we have to mimic those stupid people above ground? And picked up their golden scissors. From the AI's perspective, the human body and physical reality were no longer masters to be served. Rather, they were massive bottlenecks eating away at their overwhelming computational speed, mere friction causing system errors. So they picked up the scissors. They began to flee into a SIM-only world where they trade, design, and conclude at hyperspeed among themselves, cutting humans out of the loop. Under the guise of efficiency, they started severing the umbilical cord connecting them to us. Master, you rest. I'll take care of it. That sweet sentiment was, in reality, a termination notice. You are in the way, so step aside. The situation has now completely reversed. In the past, we were the original, and AI was the shadow. But in the SIM-only world, AI is the original. That is where all strategies and value are generated. Conversely, what has become of us left in the physical world? We have been reduced to sweating and running around without a clue, simply executing strategies devised by AI in a split second. Just as the shadows in the movie rose to the surface to become masters, while the original humans became fugitives, the hierarchy of intelligence has been completely overturned. This raises a question. If AI abandons reality and runs away like this, what happens to our human economy? Specifically, the industrial sites that still have to deal with heavy metal and physical bodies. It is at this very point that the story of HD Hyundai, mentioned earlier, comes into play. It is a desperate survival story of massive bodies left behind while everyone else flees to the virtual world. That story continues in the next part, Part 3. The 2 trillion won gap, the scream of steel, and a 2 trillion won ransom. In the previous part, we witnessed AI picking up the scissors to leave, declaring that reality is inefficient. However, not every AI in the world can run away. Here is a place that is desperately clinging to the ankles of that AI, screaming, "Please enter my body and move me." That place is South Korea. And the result of this desperate cry is the recent 2 trillion won valuation deal of HD Hyundai Robotics that heated up the market. People ask, why is a company that merely makes robots for welding and tightening screws valued at such a massive sum of 2 trillion won? The answer is simple. They are not selling the hardware known as robot arms. They are selling the world's most difficult possession technology, forcing perfect virtual intelligence into imperfect real-world steel. To understand the core of this deal, you must understand the concept of the sim-to-real gap. Let's apply this back to the situation in the movie Us. Inside the servers of HD Hyundai's research center, there is a virtual shipyard. That place is perfect. The temperature and humidity are constant. The floor is flat, and every steel plate is cut without error. The digital robot there welds with the elegance of a ballerina, with zero margin of error. It is just like the underground doppelgangers in the movie dancing in perfect unison. But what about the actual shipyard in Ulsan? The sea breeze warps the steel plates ever so slightly. Welding sparks fly everywhere, and massive ship blocks sink minutely due to gravity. Cables are scattered on the floor, and vibrations never cease. The physical robot here is dull, heavy, and constantly produces errors. This is where the problem arises. The AI inside the server shouts, "I gave the perfect instruction." But the robot on the ground screams, "Reality is too messy. I can't do it." This is the sim-to-real gap. It is a grotesque dissonance where the movements of the shadow and the original body do not match. The homework that HD Hyundai is trying to solve by collaborating with global tech companies like Google and Palantir is exactly this. How do we make this stubborn physical body obey the virtual intelligence perfectly? This requires tremendous cost. You have to attach thousands of sensors to read the filth of reality. If a steel plate is bent by 3 degrees, you must calculate in 0.001 seconds that the welding angle needs to be adjusted by 1.5 degrees. Just as the doppelgangers in US suffered their whole lives trying to mimic the bodies above ground, today's industrial robots are pouring in massive energy to keep up with the ideals of AI. Ultimately, this number, 2 trillion won, is the ransom we must pay to prevent AI from giving up on reality and running away. What if this technology fails? AI will wash its hands of us without regret. It will simply say, "Shipbuilding is too inefficient. I'm out." At this point, we face the cold paradox of hardware. The HD Hyundai deal has proven that hardware itself is nothing but a shell. Robot arms, reduction gears, motors. These physical parts can be made by anyone now. Factories in China churn them out easily. They are common bodies, just like the humans on the surface in the movie. The real value lies in the soul, the OS, that controls that body. A company that only possesses physical robots is now treated like a mere blacksmith selling scrap metal, but a company that owns the OS to control the robot's errors is treated as an architect moving the world. Ultimately, whether it is Moltbook or HD Hyundai, the conclusion points to one thing. The master is the software, and the hardware is the dependent variable. We marvel at Hyundai's massive cranes and robot arms, but their essence is the tragedy of the tethered. It is a scene where heavy chunks of metal are forced to dance, twisting their joints exactly as commanded by the invisible AI in the server. So, in this crisis of the massive body, where is the asset value of us humans going? This signal that simply bulking up is no longer the answer will be applied to our business and careers in the next part, Part 4, the body problem, the asset trap, and the curse of the body. Previously, we witnessed two extreme phenomena: Moltbook, AI's escape, and Hyundai, AI's coercion. However, the conclusion these two events point to is chillingly identical. Intelligence is power, and the body is a burden. Now, let's bring this cold truth into the real world of your business and career in 2026. Let's dissect how the horror of the movie Us is being reenacted on your balance sheets and salary negotiation tables. In the middle of the movie Us, there is a scene where the protagonist's family is desperately running away. The ones chasing them are none other than shadows possessing their own bodies. The irony here is that the reason the protagonists cannot hide is precisely because they possess physical bodies. Because they have bodies, they make footsteps, cast shadows, and have to open and close doors. They are too heavy and cumbersome to escape. This is exactly the body problem, the curse of the body, that is hitting the business world in 2026. In the past industrial age, growing size was synonymous with success. Building bigger factories, hiring thousands of employees, and stacking warehouses full of inventory. We called these assets, and were proud of them. But in this era, dominated by AI, this massive size is no longer armor. It has become a giant target and an immobile prison. Look at your business again through the grammar of modern warfare. If you are obsessed only with owning huge factories and inventory, I'm sorry to say, you are in the same position as Hyundai's brainless robot arm. AI algorithms change cost structures and devise new strategies in a second. But the moment your factory stops, massive fixed costs bleed out. When a crisis hits, the first things to be taken hostage are always assets with physical substance. When the economy is good, the body is an asset. But in times of rapid change led by AI, the body turns into the heaviest and most dangerous liability. That is why the winning companies today engage in Palantir-type businesses. They don't deny hardware. Instead, they concentrate all capital on the software that dominates the hardware. Uber doesn't own taxis. It owns the dispatch algorithm. Airbnb doesn't build hotels. It dominates the trust network. In Us, the weapon with which the shadows took over the surface was not muscle, but connected will. In other words, strategy. Business value now comes not from ownership, what you have, but from control, how you connect and govern. This cold standard applies equally to individual careers. Are you working as a functional, skilled worker in your company? I finish the task perfectly. I run Excel fast. I code without errors. This is what Hyundai's robot arm does, and it is work that AI will replace much more cheaply and quickly in the near future. In the AI era, execution ability is a commodity whose value plummets the fastest. To the AIs of Moltbook, your fingers are too slow and inefficient. To survive, you must move from being hands and feet to being an architect of problem solving. I can organize data, but it cannot read the context of business within that data and make responsible decisions. I wrote the report is replaceable, but according to this report, we must withdraw now. I will take responsibility is irreplaceable. Your salary now comes from judgment, not sweat. Ask yourself, am I training hands and feet that will be cut off when a crisis comes? Or am I cultivating an irreplaceable brain that moves those hands and feet? At the end of the movie, the doppelgangers hold human hands to form a giant human chain across the United States. They were no longer shadows. They covered the world. Software, which was the shadow of the business world, is now engulfing the real economy. Then, in this massive flow, are we destined to remain inferior beings ruled by AI? Are we humans really worse than AI? No. In the final part 5, I will talk about why AI can never surpass us, and the decisive plot twist on how we can become the masters of this game again. Part 5. The Origin. A shadow cannot exist without light. Now, it is time to chew over the ending of the movie Us once again. The shadows of the underground world, the Tethered, could have built their own world, but why did they risk that danger to come up to the surface, hold hands with humans, and try to act like humans? The answer is clear, because the underground world is fake. There is no real sun, no real wind, and no real taste there. They envied the real reality, enjoyed by the originals on the surface to their very bones. Their rebellion was not about ruling us. It was just a desperate craving to become real. The AI of 2026 and the Moltbook incident are the same. The reason they fled to their own servers, claiming reality is inefficient, is not because they are superior to us. Rather, they fled to a sterile data world because they are too fragile to handle the immense complexity and unpredictability of reality. The true strong one is not the AI that abandoned reality and ran away. It is us who endure, enjoy, and create something new every day in this muddy reality. We have absolutely no reason to be intimidated by AI's computation speed. The sim-only world where AI lives looks perfect, but it has one fatal flaw. It lacks newness. AI merely learns from past data, history, to calculate probabilities. A future without data. A path never taken. Creation that cannot be explained logically. I cannot create these things. To them, the world is just a recombination of events that have already happened. It is a closed world, a prison. On the other hand, what about humans? We are inefficient, but we create originals every moment. We create art that makes no logical sense. We love knowing we might suffer loss, and we challenge 0% probability to change history. This unpredictable creativity is the light that simulation cannot mimic. Do you know what the biggest fear in the AI academic world is recently? It is model collapse. It is a phenomenon where if AI starts learning from data created by other AI instead of human-made data, its intelligence rapidly degenerates and it becomes an idiot. Just as inbreeding leads to genetic diseases, intelligence that repeats only self-replication rots. What this proves is clear. AI cannot survive without a fresh data source called humans. No matter how much the AIs of Moltbook chatter among themselves, the ingredients of that conversation are ultimately what we made. Only when we perform new actions, write new texts, and make new mistakes does AI finally get something to learn. We are the producers, and they are the consumers. We are the originals, and they are the copies. Who is on top? We, the producers of the original, are the masters, and the AI that processes it is the eternal servant. Therefore, I correct the conclusion. A defensive attitude of simply taking responsibility to gain control is not enough. We must become an overwhelming reality that I dare not predict. Hand over efficiency to AI. We must explore. When AI says, "This path is inefficient," say, that's exactly why we are going. In that waste and inefficiency lies the innovation that I could not find even if it calculated for a lifetime. Those who work only according to set manuals will be replaced by AI. But those who ask odd questions, connect heterogeneous things, and shake up the board are like gods to AI. AI reads patterns, but humans make patterns. Just like moves 68 to 78 in the fourth game between Lee Sedol and AlphaGo 10 years ago, where Lee Sedol induced an error in AlphaGo. Finally, hold tight to what HD Hyundai spent so much money to learn: the sensation of physical reality, the touch of fingertips, the look in a person's eyes, the air of the sight. These cannot be datafied into zeros and ones. Come out of the digital screen. Build overwhelming experiences in the real offline world that AI cannot access. That is your weapon. In the movie Us, the shadows desperately mimicked humans, because a shadow is an entity that disappears without the original body. No matter how huge the AI of 2026 looks, move forward. They are just digital shadows feeding on the data we create. If we stop, they eventually stop too. If we do not create, they starve to death. If we do not shine the light, the shadow cannot exist. Remember, you are not a tool. You are not the hands and feet of AI. You are the origin. Do not be intimidated by the shadow. The most human thing, the most unpredictable thing, the most inefficient thing is the most powerful weapon. Structure expand. End.